views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the commentators, guest, and host. They do not explicitly or necessarily reflect nor represent the policy or the views held by Tobago Updates or this network. Tobago Updates or this network cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed during this program.
Come on. Like, this is like beyond ridiculous. This is kind of abusive. This slowness is like beyond ridiculous.
Full disclosure with the executive every Thursday at 8 p.m. only on Tobago Updates. Real questions and honest conversations with the sole aim of keeping you fully in the know. Full disclosure with the executive every Thursday at 8 p.m. only on Tobago Updates.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the commentators, guest, and host. They do not explicitly or necessarily reflect nor represent the policy or the views held by Tobago Updates or this network. Tobago Updates or this network cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed during this program.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Vox Populi. We are running late because, of course, I am doing it from home, and there are, of course, some technical challenges on my part, simply because I am not techno savvy whatsoever. Having said that, it's a lovely evening in a terrible situation in this country, but welcome. And I propose we start under the circumstances, as challenging as it may be for me. I trust that you are hearing me, but nonetheless, I shall pursue and strive on. I want to thank those of you that I meet casually in the streets and so. And most of you, when you meet me, you greet me warmly. And specifically, some of you offer me words of prayer for the blood and cry of Christ and so to cover me and protect me and so. And I just want to put on record tonight that I appreciate those gestures tremendously and sincerely. And I too, as a firm believer in prayer, wish to say and set for the record again, of course, that I really, really thank you for your prayer, because it is a very deep-seated belief of mine that prayer makes the darkest cloud withdraw. It's also a view of mine that if we cease from prayer, then we cease to fight, because prayer makes the Christian armor bright, and Satan trembles when he sees the weakest of God's saints upon their knees. So thank you for your prayer, and always know that you are in my thoughts warmly and with deep gratitude. Having said that, I am sure most of you would have read recently in the Guardian newspaper, which incidentally is going to be a subject matter tonight. Yeah, the Guardian newspaper. Most of you would have read in the Guardian newspaper and the Newsday. Yeah, and you know, they have put it in a very disparaging way, and so that I lost this matter with the Law Association and so. Next week, perhaps, maybe the time have come there for me to boldly and boldly place my documents in the public domain, because they are not placing any documents. What they are doing, they are placing their own version of the story. I mean, I've told you this ad nauseum, and I'll repeat again for emphasis. You will note well that there is no quarrel or argument from them over the matter related to the LLB, which is the initial law degree. What you have from the Law Association is a scandalous query concerning the LPC. Now, in simple fact and summary, what is it is that Colston University is not recognized by the Solicitor Regulatory Authority in London. Yes, I accept I should have done some due diligence, but when you are a poor person, any school that advertise themselves to be cheap and worthwhile and exist and is functioning, you go for the cheapest one. I mean, whatever they teach at Oxford is the same thing they would teach at Colston. There are persons in Grenada. I have affidavits from those persons. There are persons in Grenada and Botswana and Ghana who are back home practicing in the courts there in their country, and they went to Colston. They were able to practice because, as I found out during the petition to practice here in Trinidad, that our law, the Legal Profession Act, said for the purposes of a LPC, which is a legal practitioner's course, your institution must be recognized by the Law Society. It's now known as the Solicitor Regulatory Authority. And having considered, after my own inquiry, that the school and the Law Society in England and Wales have had a very lengthy legal battle among themselves, and so they are not, because of some outstanding fees and so, recognized by the Law Society. And as a consequence of that, I withdrew my petition, pursued another one at a master's level. The results are out. I don't have the results in my hand, but I have letters and so from the new university indicating to me that as soon as I pay my fees, I'll be able to access my results. I intend to pursue paying that quickly, whether it be through loan from a credit union or some financial institution and so. So don't let your heart be troubled by the wicked imagination of those who are bitterly against me. But I'll put in the public domain, those that are for me are more than those against me. All right? So I just wanted to settle their mind with that. So we have a very serious subject matter to discuss, and so I'm going to take the next 7 minutes to do some preliminary issues and so, and then we'll get into the substantive matter at 8:30. So preliminarily, why did the Guardian think it best that, you'll forgive me because I had to reboot the system, so you might be hearing me here, but I have to reboot the system, but most of my information and so for delivery tonight is on it, particularly the substantive matter, right? So you'll forgive me for gazing ever so often. It is only for the purpose of getting information on an independent device. The Guardian newspaper have in total scandalized the Tobago Carnival. And sorry, I have another public announcement to make. It's with deep regrets, extremely deep regrets, that tonight's show, unless the vicissitude have changed favorably, tonight's show may very well be the last. Simply because you'd realize I'm doing it from home, and that is not because there's a problem with the flight or the sea transport. There's no problem with the port or sea transport. I've been unemployed since the PNM have got in office, so that is about 8 years and some months, and I have to survive on what little savings I had that have been depleted phenomenally. And the expenses required to travel to Tobago and accommodation and ground transport and so is really not a cost I could bear on my own. And as a result of that, the show is unsponsored. And as much as I don't want to, reluctantly, I will have to take a decision to bring the show to an end, simply because it's not something I can afford, right? It's not something I can afford. I don't know, as I said, who knows? The fortune, some good Samaritan may cause the fortune to change, cause the vicissitude to change. But until and unless that is the situation and the case, tonight may very well be the last of these episodes. Right, so having said that, when we look at the Guardian newspaper published a very disparaging review of the Tobago Carnival. And we have to ask ourselves why. And to understand the why, if we have to understand the why, all right, good. So, crap. Good. So if we have to understand the why, then we have to understand what is the genuine role, not the advertised role, not the public relation role, not what they say, but the role in reality. What is the role of a media house? Media houses are created to protect interests. right? Let me repeat. Media houses are created to defend, promote, and propagate interests. The Express newspaper is concerned with the interests of the academics, the middle class, and the academics, sorry, and the black bourgeois. That is who the Express is concerned with. The Express is concerned with the academics, the bourgeois, the black bourgeois, and so the Express is concerned with that. The Express was founded, you'll never believe this, by Ken Gordon, Keith Smith, oh God, Roy Augustus. And you know how the Express started? You all remember in Tobago, in Canaan, opposite, so there were two bars down there. You had Block 22 and the other one going west. Popo, you know, in the middle of, on the opposite side, in the middle of Popo and Block 22 on the opposite side of the road, there was a blackboard. There people used to wake and get up early in the morning to see if your name was on that blackboard. I don't know much of you know that blackboard. I know that blackboard. I remember that blackboard. That blackboard was a terrible blackboard. So people used to wake up to see if their names were on that blackboard. Right? The Express newspaper started that way with that blackboard in St. Paul Street. And then, of course, it grew into what it is today. The persons at the time were like black upper middle class. So that was you had the Ken Gordons, the Roy Augustus, the Keith Smith, and those fellas. And in fact, it was formed as a fallout of those who were working with the Guardian newspaper. The Newsday was then formed. Now let me tell you all something about the Newsday. You see, it's important to know these things so you'd understand what interests this media house represents. So the Newsday was formed because the Chokolongos were involved in newspaper. Some of you may be too young, but some of you may be, you know, like the Three Bears, too old, too young, but just in between. So some of you who are in between will know this newspaper, the TNT Mirror, but we will know it when its editor was Ken Ali, and then you had Keith Shepard, and then you had Rafiq Shah. Then of course the Mirror fell flat to the ground when it was taken over by Maxi Coffey, yes, the PNM MP, and Irene Medina. It fell flat to the ground, completely flat to the ground. In fact, it never survived the failure of their management and leadership, never survived. But the Mirror, when it was in its heydays, it was founded and owned by old man Chokolingo. And Chokolingo would have had some very prominent and notable articles, like one that created precedents in the law. One such article was the judge's wife. I'm afraid to tell you all about the judge's wife. It was about a high court judge who had a wife that was very common. And I think saying common is all I want to say about the man's wife. And so Chokolingo wrote this article, the judge's wife. And he and the TNT Mirror were charged for contempt of court and so. And it went to the courthouse and, well, the rest is history. The rest is history. And coming out of that, and then there was the Ambad matter, another story Chokolingo wrote about. And so you had the matter, of course, with Ambad. And the principle held in Ambad is justice is not a cloistered virtue. It must suffer the scrutiny of ordinary men. So Chokolingo and the Mirror were heroes. They They were folk heroes in their time. But the interest they represented was to defend the downtrodden, the weak, the mendicant, the suffering, the poor, the working class. That was their interest. The Newsday was founded by Chokolingo's children who wanted to create a daily newspaper version of what their father founded as a weekly version of the T&T Mirror. The Newsday today is now a shadow of itself. The Guardian newspaper, however, my friends, have always been the rag, the propaganda tool of the bourgeois and the white plantocracy. And I make no apologies for saying that, none whatsoever. Eric Williams, hate him or love him, when he was fighting for independence in this country, and he used as part of his his material for soliciting the support of the citizenry for independence, Eric Williams used the Lord Moynes report as one of the weapons in his verbal and political arsenal. The Lord Moynes report said, until and unless the new government of Trinidad and Tobago, after the relinquishing of governance by the colonial masters in London, the new local island citizenry government must, this is what Lord Moynes said in his report, must engage in what is known as positive discrimination. And by that, Lord Moynes said, the stratas of our society are so far apart from each other that if that is not managed well, there would be crime, and we've seen it today. There would be mayhem, there would be civil disorder, there will be no peace in Trinidad and Tobago until equity is established. And any new government coming from the colony itself must first focus on positive discrimination. In other words, my friend, and let me tell you what positive discrimination means. And it's actually not a bad thing. You know, some companies, when they hiring people, they say, and universities, when they accepting students, they say things like, we would take on 10% from the LGBT community. We will take on 15% of black poor people, students. We will take on, of course, 5% of disabled people. And they have quotas of minority groups that they accept. And the stricter to apply for acceptance is lowered for these minority groups. That is what is known as positive discrimination. Lord Moynes insisted in the Lord Moynes report that there must be positive discrimination for the Afro population in Trinidad and Tobago, or else their descendants in years to come will be the perpetrators of violent crime, mayhem, civil disorder, and disturbers of the ordinary peace and sanctity of Trinidad and Tobago. Lord Moynes, that is in a report concerning Trinidad and Tobago. So Eric Williams used that report as one of his political weapons in his arsenal while, you know, advocating the independence cause in Trinidad and Tobago. You all know who was Eric Williams' fiercest opposition? Make a guess. I'm gazing now at the comments to see if anybody could guess. I'm gazing now at the the comments to see if anybody could guess who was Eric Williams' fiercest opposition. Yeah. Gazing now to see if anybody could guess who was Eric Williams' fiercest opposition. Well, let me tell you. Eric Williams' fiercest opposition was the Guardian newspaper. Yeah, believe it or not. The Guardian newspaper provided the fiercest criticism and opposition to Eric Williams and others, Ferdy Ferreira and others, Robinson and others, when they were struggling for independence for Trinidad and Tobago. And we must ask ourselves why. Remember I told you, media houses represent interest groups. The Guardian newspaper have always been the media tool for the white plantocracy. Who own it? And by the way, talking about who own it, how much of you remember Syrians riding around on bicycle all over the place with a notebook, selling your pants length of cloth and skirt length of cloth and dress length of cloth, and if you give them $3 now, they mark it down in a book, and every time they ride around with their bicycle, they collect 50 cents or $2. Sometimes they sleep on your porch. Knowing us in Tobago, we were different to the people in Trinidad. Yes, thank you all. Capildio and all these were people that were part of it. Right? We were different to the people in Trinidad. We used to facilitate them on report. Not report, sorry. We used to carry them in the house. Come off, we take we train off with bed. Make up bed for them to sleep on, the Syrians. And I want to ask you something, Trinidad and Tobago. How much cloth you could sell to own the whole of Trinidad? How much cloth you could sell to own the whole of Trinidad? I'll say no more at this time about that. But you have to understand what is the Guardian's role. The Guardian's role will have always been to propagate and disseminate information for the white plantocracy. And I've always asked this question, and I'm yet to receive an answer. Let me repeat. I've always asked this question, and I'm yet to receive an answer. This was a slave colony, Trinidad and Tobago. Yes, it was a slave colony. We know who the slave masters, we know who the descendants of the slaves are. Yes, we do. We know. Of course we do. We know who they are. They are me, they are you. We know, and we know where we are. We know who we are. We know where the descendants of the slaves are. And we know who they are. We know who are the descendants of the indentured laborers. And we know where they are. But where is the descendants of the slave masters and the plantation owners? Where is the plantocracy? Well, believe it or not, they are right here in Trinidad and Tobago among us, just like the descendants of the slaves and just like the descendants of the indentured laborers. But you see, they manifest themselves through instruments and so, and the Guardian newspaper is one such instrument. So when the Guardian newspaper was putting up the opposition, it was putting up against Eric Williams. While they were fighting for independence, Eric Williams had to go to Woodford Square. At that time, it was known as Brunswick Square, and burn the Guardian newspaper. There was a bonfire. PNM didn't form yet. At the time, it was the teachers' movement, it was called. And they went to Woodford Square and burnt the Guardian newspaper in a large, massive bonfire. And it was then Eric Williams called the Guardian newspaper. He described them as the Jammet on St. Vincent Street. So I am not surprised when the Guardian newspaper, as if somebody wanted a review from them, I am not surprised when the Guardian newspaper and a cafe Negro called Liz Williams in Tobago decide to disparage the People's Carnival in Tobago. Everywhere you went in that carnival, there was good reports. It was incident-free. People were enjoying themselves. And you know what is more important? And I don't know if the THA understand this. It was non-competitive. I want to underscore that. It was non-competitive. So the participation in it was not for a grand prize. It was not for reward. It was to bolster culture, community spirit, brotherhood, love, friendship, peace, decency. To stir up, right? To stir up the economy. And it's stirring up the economy is the reason for the Guardian newspaper attempting to disparage our carnival in Tobago. You have to understand who owns the Guardian newspaper. Because the same people who owns the Guardian newspaper are the same people who have Rowley and his cabinet on strings like puppets. You have to understand that. The guard, you all remember there's a video, I don't have it, and if I had remembered, I would have found it and asked the producer to play it for me tonight. I don't know if he have it, and if he have it and he play it, I'll be grateful. You all remember also, there was a group of people having a meal with an American newspaper, and an American reporter, and they told the American reporter, the few of us sitting down here, we are the most powerful people in this country. They own the Guardian newspaper. Rowley and his cabinet are their puppets. But let me hasten to the point I am making. Why then would the Guardian newspaper seek to disparage our Tobago Carnival? The Tobago House of Assembly, our Tobago House of Assembly, every Tobagonian House of Assembly took a decision to, one, bring the carnival into Scarborough. And I applaud and support that decision. In fact, when it was in Crown Point last year, I was one of the persons who were quietly in dissent about it. Right? I was one of the persons who was quietly in dissent about it. Why was I in dissent about it? Because it's all about economic stimulation. What do I mean by that? Let me tell you what I mean by that. One, when I go into Scarborough with $100 and I buy some sauce, I buy some sauce, roti, and so from one of the vendors. That vendor might be selling beer, so I buy a beer. Well, who am I fooling? I buy a drink of Old Oak White and tonic water. Yeah, that's my drink. So I buy a Old Oak White and tonic water. With $100, I buy some sauce and some roti and duck and some jira and thing. I buy that. That $100 I gave to that vendor in Scarborough. You know what that $100 doing? The pork that vendor took from the market vendor and say I will pay after carnival goes back to that market vendor. So that I satisfy a bill. The $100 move from the vendor in Scarborough to the market vendor who pays for his pork. He goes up to Goldsboro and pay the pig farmer for his pig. The pig farmer pays Tadco for the wheat and the grains and so they feed the pig with. Tadco pay the employees. The employees pay the NIS and health surcharge and what's the other thing? Pay as you earn. The pay as you earn goes into the consolidation fund. It provides more goods and services for the people of Tobago through the limited allocation they give to us. What goes into the NIS assists you to pay for the benefits and pensions and funeral grants and injury grants and so. And the health surcharge contributes to Faith and her efforts at the Scarborough Hospital and all the health facilities. You understand how economies are stimulated? Let us contrast that. Let us contrast that with spending in Crown Point. Every Syrian-owned business on that stretch in Crown Point receives our money during the carnival, puts it in a bag, walks across the Crown Point airport, catch a plane, go back to Trinidad and deposit it into the account there. So there is no economic stimulation or generation throughout the island of Tobago if we spend there. That is how economies work. Having lost the earning, they have lost this carnival. I told you what the Guardian role was, and it's to protect a group of people's interests. So the Guardian is now retaliating for the people whose interests it have been created, designed, and operates to seek. I condemn the Guardian today. Let me repeat, I condemn the Guardian newspaper for that disparaging attack on the efforts of the people of Tobago through its constitutional and legal institution called the Tobago House Assembly. The next show, even if I have to swim to Tobago, I know I told you all about the show. I'm really not sure if after this one, if there'll be another one, but just stay tuned. And maybe the time have come. If I have to do another show, or if I'm allowed, and if you know the logistics and so assist me to do another one, then it would be taking place around a bonfire, burning the Guardian newspaper to show our dissent in Tobago on their disparaging attack on us. So I invite you to keep your Guardian, gather up your Guardian. But the next show we're doing would be around a bonfire, showing our disgust on the attack upon us by the Guardian newspaper in an interest to defend and retaliate for those whose interest it was created, designed, and operates to protect. I say no more on that issue at this time. But because I want to go quickly now to, guys, you have the police recording for Boko, please.
Right? Well, I don't want to hear no brother. The brother come and talk to the properly dressed. I don't want to hear no brother. Right? Hey, no my brother. Right? If you see me out there and you want to handbug me. Right, no, you stand up. No, but ask all the properly dressed. Hey, ask all the properly. I didn't come and ask the properly, officer. You want me to? No, I can't. No conversation now. I told them, we'll feel bad. You know what happened? When them go and put it up online, you know what they're going to say? Trinidad and Tobago people. Me and the government, Trinidad and Tobago people, boys. I am from Trinidad and Tobago. Where you go? I don't want to hear no conversation with all of that. I see you said. I don't want to hear no conversation with all that. Because this is stupidness. It is stupidness. The accident, you don't make noise to people here. By my whole family, police and soldiers. Right? I respect everybody more than you. Well, they show me no respect. But hey, why am I feel hungry money, guys? Look at how far nice stupidness. You telling me because you there and all this police. Right? So what? Well, hey, jump into it over there, they get damaged. My insurance drop up. Right? So your insurance is jumping up, right? My insurance. Right? Your work is to come make sure everything is okay already. Anybody in this village, anybody in Boko village.
What you are looking at there, my friends, is the police, what they call it? It's a marine branch of sort. The riverine unit. Now, the jetty in Boko have always been designed to do no more or no less than this. That you don't moor at the jetty. So you don't go up there and dock and anchor up and park up. Park up, let me use the word loosely, park up. So you don't moor at the jetty. The jetty is to facilitate unloading, loading and so. Whether it be passengers or the fishermen with their equipment to go to sea and their wares of fish and so when they return from sea. The police went there on a very busy day when the reef operators wanted to carry the tourists across to the Boko Reef and the island pool and so, as they do every day. And they moored to the jetty. As a result of that, the operators had to say, well, you know, since it's jetty built, you know, we don't anchor it, we don't moor on it, we use it for egress and access and so to the sea and back and so. And the police response to them was, we's police, nobody can tell police when to move. And so they decided they would stay there for 2 days in an effort to disrupt the operations there at Boko, because we's police and nobody can tell police how to move. I want to condemn that action tonight. I want to condemn it as being high-handed. I want to condemn it as being disruptive. You see, because whether those ignorant officers know or they care to know, I will tell them how the tourism sector works. So you can't be dispatched from Trinidad to come to Tobago to assist in the Boko Reef Tourist Protection Drive and so, when you are a purveyor of disrupting the operations. So what will happen there, and I know that, put up the other video for me, please, because the other video would have the precarious maneuver I saw some tourists having to do to get from one boat onto this next one back to the jetty, and it was a very dangerous maneuver. More so because the tourist doing it was an aged woman. That is the one I saw. So if you get that, put up that one, and I'll talk while it's going on. Right? So you'll see it somewhere where you'll see a tourist having to get from one boat into this coastal patrol vessel by the police and so. So she had to get into, use one vessel, come from one vessel, climb onto theirs. Those are aged people, eh? Aged people. Then to finally get on the jetty. How these things work, my friends, is that, come back to me. Europeans and North Americans, I want to repeat that for emphasis. Europeans and North Americans are very litigious people. So when they get back home, they'll say to their travel agency, no, you sold me this thing, and then you had me in the middle of a brawl between the police and the operators. You told me how the Boko Reef, you told me go to Boko for it. And then they start writing what is known as reviews. The travel agency, to mitigate any litigation that may come their way, because they were the one who sold the package, advised the tourists to do that when you get here and so. When they come, to mitigate their damages, they put up some warnings now. If you're going to Tobago, avoid the reef, or if you have to go to the reef, don't use it by Boko, because there is usually confrontation between the police and the operators. And then if those people had English communication challenges by virtue of not speaking English, and this is not, I am not stretching it to achieve an outcome. I'm telling you how these things work. Then they don't understand what took place there. And then in their mind, there was a confrontation with the police and the operators. So they start warning others through their reviews on the travel agency websites and so, negatively. And then, by abracadabra, we end up with an advisory negative about Boko going to the reef. That is how advisory work. Everybody know the Queen's Park Savannah. People just be there picnicking. It's one of the places in Trinidad you could carry a train on a Sunday and let it run about with kite and football and marble. But one Japanese girl walked through there at night and got raped and strangled to death. And up until today, every embassy in Port of Spain is describing the Queen's Park Savannah as like Sealots and Beetham, one of the places not to go because crime high up to the sky inside there. And that will come about because of reviews. And so I call on the police to do what they have to do to mitigate that negative impression they created before it snowball into a negative position. Before it snowballs into a negative position for us in Tobago. 2, Put up the bar license for me, please. And then we go on to the other matters. Yes. Yeah, put up the bar license for me, please. Right. So I've redacted the information. Could you blow it up, please? Because I want to read at the bottom. I want to read the last numbered line. Oh, well, it's coming across. Okay, and maybe it's on my phone, but it's appearing to be not eligible, not legible. Sorry. The point I want to make about this, my friends, is that these operators and vendors and businessmen and young entrepreneurs, these are what I always struggle with. Yeah? I've got somebody help me with the word now. Young entrepreneurs. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, sorry about that. So these young entrepreneurs invested a lot of money to provide their wares and so for sale and so, their drinks and this kind of thing. They have an order from the court saying that they can operate until the 31st of October, which was yesterday, 30 days of September, April, June, and November. So yesterday at midnight. Yesterday was what? Tuesday. One assistant superintendent, Ramesa, from the IATF, shut down operations at 10 p.m. on Monday. Now I hear the arguments about the declaration of the festival, and so I hear all those arguments. But this is a country of laws. This is not a country of men. And if a court grants an license through an order for persons to operate until 12 midnight on the 31st of October, no police officer, whether it be ASP, Ramisa, or any other police officer, can unilaterally vary an order of the court. If they wish to cause the operation of vending alcohol and so to cease at the 10 p.m. they executed, then they needed to go to the court, make an application, have the order varied, and serve the cease and desist with the varied order. But they can't go and unilaterally disrupt, disregard, and annul any order of the court. This is a country of laws. This is not a country of men. And so I call on the Commissioner of Police to walk carefully concerning your operations in Tobago, because we will not forgive you for any irrational and illegal abuses upon our people. We will not forgive you. Now, ordinarily I would not have raised that. I would not have raised it. But I have in my possession here, and I'm only going, I'm trying to block off the logo. But I'm going to flash it. Next week we'll deal with this in detail. I'll go and flash it. This is, my friends, 2 bills. One, 2. Of 2 hotels. 2 hotels that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service have booked. And they told the hoteliers, we don't want nobody else there. We want we alone there. We're coming up with horse and dog and cow and cat and fish and goat. We don't want nobody else there. And they book out the people hotel. They wanted it exclusively for themselves. And on the day of checking in, rather than not before, on the day of checking in, which was in the height of the carnival Saturday, On the day of checking in, they decide to say, call and say, we're not coming again, the commissioner don't want me to come. That's a separate show, but I just think I should tell you all about that. So while everybody else's hotel was full, 2 hotels in Tobago remained without an earning because the police service gave them, through letters and so, legitimate expectation to be booked out during the period. We'll deal with that next week. I wanted to deal with tongue and planning. Let's bring on Max James. I want to get to Max. I want to get to my brother Max. Producer, I'll be taking a 20 minutes further. I want to get to my brother Max. I'm on WhatsApp, Jenny. Speak to me there. Let's get Max James. Max, you still there? All right, well, if he's not, guys, talk to me on WhatsApp, please. It's up. Now see a message from you. Let me open it. All right. My brother Max, how you going, comrade?
I'm good. I'm all right.
Yeah, so I've sought leave and was granted 20 minutes further. So yes. Now, citizens of the Republic, I have with me former Assemblyman and Secretary for Labor and Cooperatives in the Tobago House Assembly, brother comrade Max James. Brother comrade Max James. Brother James is engaged in a massive battle. Trying to pull up this. I'll get it. Pull it up. A massive battle concerning the issues of bread, peace, and justice. That matter, my friends, is related to and incidental upon the termination of workers, and one in particular, at the TADCO. You'll forgive me. TADCO. And TADCO, Max, stands for
Tobago Agribusiness Development Company.
Yeah, this was running a bit slow, but it's up. No, wrong one. Right, so it's up now. The Tobago, right, got it. The Tobago Agricultural Development Company. And
Tobago Agribusiness. No. It's Tobago Agribusiness Development Company.
So, company, great. Done. And Max James, my friends, have always been a industrial relation practitioner, yes?
Yes, well, I came out of retirement because the PSC asked me to represent one of their members.
Well, if they bring a man out of retirement, they bring you out because it's heavy tempo in the matter.
Well, perhaps. The matter concerns the dismissal of a particular worker in circumstances which the court or the law would say in unconscionable, harsh and oppressive circumstances. My concern is what is the basis, what is the legal basis, or what is the organizational basis, what is the social basis, what is the overriding social interest for such a dismissal amongst 70 plus workers. And I want to put it out there because some people who are perhaps not apprised of how a country should run will feel that, okay, so you are attacking the government. It has nothing to do with attacking the executive council or the party, because the fact of the matter is that Tobagonians have to learn, and in particular the party in government, to disagree without recrimination on any point. And the government here in Tobago has sworn to obey the constitution and the law, and they themselves should, in my view, respectful view, ensure that they in fact follow settled cases in industrial relations, settled principles in industrial relations, as it pertains to the employment, non-employment, re-employment, as the case may be, of workers. And when you have your followers disparaging people who are well trained and skilled on these matters, and you suddenly become your own industrial relations expert, it doesn't augur well for Tobago's development. When you seek to disparage somebody, and I'm not patting my back on the shoulder, so to speak, when you seek to disparage persons who are learned in these particular areas, you send out your lieutenants and your well, I don't want to use a disparaging term against somebody like myself. It doesn't strengthen the party. It doesn't strengthen Tobago. It doesn't strengthen democracy. And if it is that you're told that you're going wrong, you need to turn around and see perhaps what it is. It is not a question where we can just decide to send home workers because it's difficult to not. It's difficult to dismiss persons if they belong in the public service. And I always tell people, public officers are very easy to dismiss if you follow the rules and you allow those rules to take root in terms of your operations. You allow those rules to be fostered in a particular kind of way where all will feel just or justified in respect of what the law says. The issue is you're now putting 70 persons plus on the breadline. You are presented no executive council minute, and then I would ask, what is the justification for that? You haven't given workers any package, and then you say to workers, we will now do a package for workers who are disgruntled. And I say, disgruntled? If you pinch me, then I will cry. If you cut me, I will bleed. So workers have a right to be disgruntled if they lose their employment. And then you arbitrarily reselect some of them. You arbitrarily, and they will try to justify it, arbitrarily select who they feel. The law doesn't work that way. Skippy, are you there?
Yes, I am. Is it an
Right.
But is it an issue that their contract may have come to an end and the board wish to conduct its affairs with new persons? I don't know. I'm asking.
Right.
Yes.
So there's this if you look at my application, and
Yes.
let me just back up a little bit. So the application was dismissed. Why? Because we went to the court on the notion that, as is allowed for in the Industrial Relations Act, where the court can regulate its own procedure. And because of the urgent timeline, hoping that the court would agree with our approach in the matter. So the court says, listen, come back with your dispute. And we came back with it. So that first application was dismissed on a procedural issue, not in terms of the correctness of it or the merits of it.
Yeah, the merits
So
of the matter, yes.
Right. So, and they're laughing because they don't understand. And they cause their followers to laugh. It's really silly because they don't understand process. And before you teach the population as to what should happen in respect of a legitimate expectation, I'll come to that, and respect to the renewal and non-renewal contract, you push something in the society that weakens the society rather than build the society. So that on the second application, I had to withdraw the application because the council would have come to the conciliation meeting and raise a query. Once a query is raised, it means that the matter has to go to the RRCB, meaning the Registration, Recognition and Certification Board. And they know full well that the matter is going to take a long time before it can come back to the court. So it's a tactic that employers...
What was the query that was raised that would require that the intervention of the RRC?
RRCB, Registration, Recognition and Certification Board. So what that does, if you are an employer and there is a dispute and you only raise two questions, is this person truly a worker? We query that this person is truly a worker, meaning they don't have the protection of the Industrial Relations Act and the Industrial Court. It means, therefore, to determine whether that person is truly a worker, the RRCB is the only body that can say this is indeed a worker. So once that is raised, RRCB...
But doesn't the Act, Chapter 8801, settle in statute what is the definition of worker?
Right. So there are sometimes, if you are close to the decision making or you're close to policy making, then in such a case, if the employer only raises that and they said, no, we doubt that this person does not is not involved in policy making, policy development, and the kind of thing. And once that question is raised, when that query is raised, the RRCB is the only body that can say, no, we don't agree with you. This person has the cover or this of the Industrial Relations Act and Criminal Court. This is the only body that can say this person is in fact a worker or this person is not a worker under the meaning of the Act.
Yeah.
So that question was raised, and the matter has now gone to the RRCB, and on result, certificate will be issued, and the matter will go to the RRCB. It may take a long time, depending on what strategies that we employ. The sorry thing is that the council came to the court on the same day because we in fact had the injunction to be heard at 1 o'clock while the conciliation was at 10 o'clock. So I had to tell the court, well, Your Honor, as well, I have to withdraw the application because I couldn't lie, because counsel was there. In any event, the court would know. So I had to come very honestly, clean hands to the court and say, well, we have to withdraw the application because the question was raised as to whether the person was indeed a worker or not. And the other thing that an employer can raise is whether an employee is what you call a worker in good standing. So on those two grounds only, and those things take a long time. The issue is that you are delaying justice for the workers, in my view, because I know many of them. I have friends there, I have relatives there, and they're all Tobagonians. And when you put them on, when the company puts them on the breadline, what do you expect? There's one woman who has 5 children. And my argument is that how is she going to feed her children? How can you really govern a society where you put people on the breadline for no good reason? On the 30th of May, the company wrote to all the workers asking them if they wanted their jobs, they wanted a new contract. By virtue of that question, they created an illegitimate expectation.
Yeah, my point exactly, because if a company did that, then I think in the book Judicial Review and Administration Action, the Smith and Wolf and Joel in page 1335, yes? Paragraph 13 to 35, it's said that although you as a statutory body might be free to alter your policy,
exactly,
you're by no means free to ignore the existence of a legitimate expectation.
And Lord Denham would have made certain comments and rulings in that regard. So if you write to me, and TATCO would have written to every worker asking, do you want to have your contract renewed? By virtue of those
words? No, I'm trying to understand. Did they write it with those words?
I don't have.
Or is it in front of me? or there's a paraphrase. Because if you write and say, "Do you want your contract to be renewed?" Then there's something known in the law where they say, sometimes avoid asking questions because you might find yourself bound by the answer.
Right. So I'm just paraphrasing it, but the phrase went something like this: that your contract is coming to an end. Please indicate whether you are desirous of continuing your career or your contract with TADCO. Right. So the employee will
I
then
have
write
not
and
seen
say,
the letter. I have
right.
not seen
No,
the letter,
but
but
it's
I would hope. I have not. Sorry for interrupting. I have not seen the letter, but I would hope TADCO also included in the letter. And if you indicate in the affirmative, you will be considered among the other applicants. Because if you tell me, indicate if I want back the job, indicate if I want back the job. Then if I tell you yes, the job is mine.
exactly.
Yeah.
But they know they don't have a case, so they would have asked all the workers, and all the workers would have replied yes. Instantly, they created a legitimate expectation on the part of the workers. So that's one pillar. Now, the only good reason why an employer could not or should not or ought not or would fail in any application, if you tell me, you ask me whether I want my contract to be for me to go on my contract, right, to be renewed. You can't come on the back of that and then tell me 9 days before the contract is supposed to expire and then tell me, look, collect your things. We no longer, thanks for your service. You're part of the company. You help the company through these bad periods and so forth. And then say, that's it. No termination package.
I hear
nothing at all. And then you tell me just go home. It is so unconscionable.
I hear the legalese. I hear the legalese. But I hear the legalese. And I could do the legalese too. And sometimes I enjoy the legalese and so, quite frankly. But we'll continue the legalese, but I wanted to ask you. We'll get back to the legalese, but I wanted to ask you, what is the crux of the issue? Is it that those persons so terminated or relieved of the job or the positions were not supporters of this current administration? What is the crux of the issue?
Well,
to
put it as a matter of the crux of the matter is that the company has embarked on a purported restructuring.
Okay.
But they went about it the wrong way. They believe that they know the company is failing in terms of its financial fortunes and all of that. And the chief executive officer, who is the main speaker on behalf of the company, says that the workers are square pegs in wrong holes and they're not performing. So I say to Mr. Alfred and his team, you had a company for 2 years. The company has failed, but your solution to a failing company, which you had for 2 years, is to send home the workers because you believe that they're not performing. Well, if you believe the workers aren't performing, the solution is not to send them home. The solution is to fix the HRM. So you can't talk in Tobago because you're suddenly against the TPP. I'm a member of the TPP, but you strengthen the party by doing the right thing. What is human resource management? Human resource management.
Okay.
Right. Human resource management. So employers are expected to carry out proper human resource management practices in terms of project management, in terms of performance management, in terms of marketing, which is an issue at TADCO, and along governance and all of those kind of nice things, right? Strategic management and strategic performance, all those kind of things. So if you're not doing that and your workers are not performing, then you have failed. If the workers, from the evidence, have good performance appraisals, then you can't fire them. The law doesn't protect the employer, particularly if I have a good performance appraisal report. I haven't committed any action. At this point, I haven't committed any action that go to the root of my employment. On what basis are you going to send me home? Because you believe that you have some purported reason for sending me home? Then
I am asking this for the purpose of advancing the discussion. I have no horse in the race.
Neither myself.
If you ask me to find Tadco right now, I have no idea when Tadco is. Honestly, the last time I know about I know it as marketing board, and they were down behind by the laundry to go through the track to go over to Lambo. So from Scarborough, so I have no horse in the race, right? But I want to talk about the appraisal. We won't discuss any individual one, but were the appraisal performances report, were they good ones?
Excellent. And the court will ask the question, how did the workers perform on the last contract? And if the performance appraisal reports are good, then you have no basis for dismissing anyone. In fact, the case law is well settled where, and I want to be able to hear this because people are pushing in the space that the Children's Authority has done it, other employers have done it, but they are breaking the law. The fact of the matter is the settled cases in this country, there are numerous of them. There are many of them. Once a contract comes to an end, it must be renewed if there are no mitigating circumstances that go to the root of the employee's contract of employment. So if I have performed well, then you don't have no basis for saying that you can't renew my contract. Now, there's one other basis on which you cannot renew somebody's contract if you are restructuring the organization as a whole. Then an employee or a union can't tell the employer what to do, but there are certain procedures that must be followed. And the court is very, 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 very strict on process. So Tadco throughput has not followed the process. They did not tell the workers, look, and with written correspondence, they have not told the workers at all in any formal way that we are involved in a restructuring and some of you will have to exit the company. But you come 9 days,
right.
9 working days before time.
I must ask
9 working days before time. 9 working days before time, and then send over everybody and pick back who you want.
I must ask you a question.
That in the PSA's view is very unconscionable. It is not palatable. It is pure evil. It's unconscionable to send home before Christmas 70 plus workers and pick back who you feel. Now there's one other point. I heard.
No, before you get to the next point, my friend, I want to ask you this. The contract. So ordinarily, from memory, because I since first year, a contract would have what? An offer, acceptance, consideration, capacity, legality.
Yes.
But order
correct.
And then implied terms. So in implied terms. Express, thank you. Express and implied terms. So the expiry of a contract can be expressed to say your contract ends in a nominated period of this date upon 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And impliedly, it could say 2 years after the beginning. So you know that is implied. So express and implied terms. So it would be a term of the contract to expire at some time, because a contract cannot exist infinity. Is this a case that the contract expired and the company in its restructuring have decided to not move forward with some of the persons whose contract have expired because in its restructuring process, they did not see a role for those contracts that have expired? And if a contract have been extinguished, then it's as null as it was before it was commenced. Yeah, is that the case?
So that would be no, and that would be wrong. People don't know that, and they go about telling people for their own purposes and for their own justification that when a contract comes to an end, that's it. The settled law in industrial relations says quite differently. The only time you cannot renew someone's contract, I gave two reasons. One, if there's a restructuring, but that has to be announced. It has to be totally expressed in writing by way of letter and notification. And in this particular case, ordered by the Executive Council. Now, I don't know what whether the Executive Council knows what is happening or not. I suspect, hold on.
No,
I suspect that they may not know. Because I believe if they know, they will take action. And some people believe that I'm attacking the secretary. I'm not. I'm attacking process. You have to treat your people on sound process with fairness and with equity. I wager the Executive Council did not order the dissolution of TATCO. Let me repeat for the members of the public. It is a fallacy or it is false that when a contract comes to the end, that your contract should not be renewed. The law says quite differently. And I want to urge members of the Executive Council to stop following that nonsense and stop spewing, if they are doing it, that nonsense in the public to get their way.
No, so
the law says that when a contract comes to an end, if particularly those who would have had, as in the case of TATCO workers, who would have been there for the last 25 years, 20 years, multiple contracts. You can't come tomorrow and then send me home. The law says that they're good as permanent. So if my contract comes to an end on the 30th of October, 30th of October, or 31st of October, sorry, you can't send me home. The law says you can't do that. The only basis, again, is if there is a restructuring, and that has to be ordered.
My friend,
hold on. No, that has to be ordered by the Executive Council.
But I have questions to ask to her. Remember, that discussion is not a lecture.
Sorry.
I have questions to ask to my friend.
Forgive me, Skippy. Forgive me.
I was a contract officer with the Ministry of the People, and incidentally, my contract came to an end on the election day in 2015. It was a Monday. So a week before the Monday, I start removing my personal effects. I never stopped going to the office to have my work to do as executive director of the ministry. I had my work to do. And then Friday, so I didn't want to be leaving on the last day with a set of boxes and so. So then on the Friday, I left with the last book below my arm. Are you saying then I could have taken my heels and say to the PS and the director of personnel, I think it was the DP or something so?
Director of Personnel Administration?
Yeah, there was somebody that structured my terms and salary and so. Are you saying that I could have taken my heels and say they were wrong because my contract came to an end, I must stay on?
So let me clarify that. Now, if I give you a contract for service, now there are two types of contracts.
Yeah. Contract of services, contract
for service. Right.
Yeah.
Now, on the written paper, the paper they give you, it will be deemed contract for service. But when you apply what is called the test of an employee, you will see that it's really a contract of service. A little bit difficult to understand, right? So, but if I say, Skippy, I'm going away to United States.
Yeah, but
and I want you to, because and I want you.
Because we're not speaking to each other, and I imagine just like you, I have been examined on contract law. So let's bear in mind we're speaking to the public who ought to understand what we're saying, because there's no point in us talking if the public would not be understanding what we're saying. Yes?
Right. So I'm giving them the
But I have some questions to ask you before we go.
Yeah. Right. So if I say I'm going away to United States. I want you cut my yard for me for the year. When I come back, I will pay you. Or I'll send monthly remittances to you in respect of the time I'll be away. Now, that is strictly what you call a contract for service, because I can't discipline you. You're not in any chain of command and things like that. You control the time when you come.
I'm very tempted to get up and just take a walk and go and get my McKendrick. My McKendrick on contract. It's on my bookshelf there.
Hold on.
Because at some time a contract must be extinguished. If it's a term of the contract.
So I'm coming to you. So I'm giving you a case of a strict contract for service, and I'm giving you a case now of contract of service. So I give you a piece of paper and you sign it, and it says 3 years. If you are going to continue with that particular activity, it means, therefore, you have to give me the opportunity to continue in that same role. You can't bring somebody and replace me and then say, well, your contract came to an end. The law says you have to consider my time and my service and my legitimate expectation, since you are, in fact, continuing with the operation. So even though my contract says 3 years, the law says if you don't renew the contract, it can be a dismissal, that which is harsh and oppressive. That is settled law. So no employer in this country.
No, then I must ask you this, my friend.
Go ahead.
So remember, people are listening to us too. So I'm not being confrontational, but I must ask this.
Perfectly.
What about the term in all employment contracts, whether it's for services or of services, that indicates that you can be terminated by notice? Whether it's I give notice, if I'm the employer, or if you are the employer, you give me notice in lieu of a salary of a period, or I give you notice by writing within a period of days and so. Those are terms of contracts, which reflects and indicates that the contract
can be terminated by either side.
Can be repudiated at some time. And if I offer you a contract for a 3-year period, then you cannot legitimately expect to work with me for 15 years if there's a contract for 3 years. You want to reconcile that for us?
So Lord Denham MR would have ruled on that particular question, and he would have said, if I contract with you for 3 years, that interloping clause is null and void. It is put in contracts, but Lord Denham at the level of the Privy Council has said that they put it here, that interloping clause is null and void, even though you see it in the contract. No, if you tell me by just word of mouth,
you have the authority. You have the authority there with you.
It's there in the application.
It's in the bond. Okay. No, well, go ahead. I want to look at it, because if that the authority existed, it may be authority I would want to read to the public. Let me look for it.
Right.
You know what paragraph specifically?
Let me see. Hold on. It isn't spelled out, because in the application you have to be very precise.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go down. Let me see. I could find it for you quickly.
I'm seeing reference or some authorities from Justice Ventor. I'm seeing some from the Price and Commission. I'm seeing some from the Judicial Review of Administration Action.
Right. So in the judgment here, Lord Denham MR expresses the principle in very simple language in the case of HTV Limited.
What paragraph?
That's paragraph 7.
7, yes.
Right, down to the end. But of course, is not fully.
Yes. So.
Right. But so if you get the judgment and you read it.
No, I want to read it for the public then. Further, His Lordship on page 32 of the aforesaid judgment said, Lord Denning, Master of the Rolls. A lot of people think MR is Mr. It's actually Master of the Rolls. Expresses the principle in very simple language in the case of HTV Limited and Price Commission 1976 ICR 170, where he said at page 185, but, quote, but that it is subject to the qualification that it must not misuse its powers, and it is a misuse of power for it to act unfairly or unjustly towards private citizens when there is no overriding public interest to do so. I'm not being confrontational, but can you reconcile that with giving life after the repudiation of a contract? Giving life to a contract after it has been repudiated?
So if you go back further up in terms of the cited case in case of Justice S. Ventor on page 29, he would have said the process of taking these decisions, the authority is duty bound to take into consideration the interests of those who will be adversely affected by any changes in its policies or operations. So that if you want to,
then I am no THA lawyer. Remember, I don't even know TADCO. If you ask me, if you tell me meet me by TADCO, I have no idea where I'm meeting you. But this is important. This is important. And I didn't want my trainer thought to go. So I want to quote Justice Ventor. I think this is Sebastian Ventor, yes? So the process of taking these decisions, the authority is duty bound to take into consideration the interests of those who would be adversely affected by any changes in its policies or operation. Therefore, then, my friend, the question is, when did the life of the contract become repudiated? Before the changes? After the changes? In other words, if the company, TADCO, Scissors, Skippy, White Oak Company, Max James Company, whoever company, decide we're going to restructure, when was the termination done?
So, as I said, let me explain it slowly. If it is that the company wants to restructure its operations, as you would know, let me talk to you a little bit. You know, trade unions are said to be what you call. Let me use that term, a smaller term that people can understand. They are illegal by dint of the expressed words of the law. But the law would have said, even though what you call in restraint of trade, they are still lawful. So that is how trade unions came about, because you are established to tell the employee what he could do for what he can't do. However, so Justice Ventor is saying, whenever the employer wishes to take actions in respect of his own business, even if you want to do that, you must take into consideration the interests of those who would be affected by your decisions. So,
and this
so
is
therefore,
and this is again. So, I am no advocate for TADCO, but this is important.
Let me just
very important.
Right.
How long were these employers working there?
The employees, some for 25 years, some for 20 years, some for 12 years. And the law says,
if they were there for 20 years, wasn't TADCO created in 2020?
Right. So they are a successor company, and therefore everything that prevailed before, they will now assume responsibility for it.
No. And I hear you with that loud and clear. But after ask, was the original, whoever did it first, I don't know whether it's Motorola thing, but was the one before, was it dissolved for the creation of a new?
Correct. And the court says, as you know, with succession law or with successor companies, if the workers are merged into a new entity, the new entity does not dissolve what happened before. It has to take full responsibility in terms of the workers, the machinery, the money, the time and period workers would have worked. They all assume responsibility for that. They have to own it.
Okay.
But so right. So you know that. You know that.
That's my friend. Well, I'm sure you're not going to be antagonized with these questions because it's
No, no,
the
no,
cut
I'm
and
cool.
trust of how the bar operates, right? So I must ask you this. Must ask.
Yeah,
So remember, people listening, and we have to
yeah,
draw
we
out this
want them to listen.
information.
Yes.
So I must ask you, what was the preceding company's or organization name? That is important. It's important why I'm asking you that.
Okay, so you had one company called TicoSwap, which was
Call
very
what?
solvent. TicoSwap, Tobago,
Toko,
cold storage,
Toko,
warehousing,
right, Toko Sap. So that was a company.
TicoSwap. Yeah, and then you had the
Right.
fishing company of Tobago.
Limited liability, trust,
Yes, fishing.
what
So you had the fishing company, and then you had the cassava company,
right.
all merged
Oh,
into
good.
TATCO.
All
So,
right.
so let me
So
let me
Toko Sap, the fish. No, I'm not saying the
TicoSwap.
Toko Sap, by whatever alias it's called, the one before, they were limited
Yes,
liabilities. Right.
yes,
Right. By whatever alias they're called. So they were limited liabilities, yes?
right,
But you do know, my friend, you do know, I'm sure you ought to know that a company has a personality of its own.
yes,
And if Tofu, Safa, and all of them were dissolved, then in law, because it's not a natural person, but it's considered dead. So they don't exist. So that personality of Tofu, a company is an individual. It has its own
correct,
personality and so. It may not be
correct,
a natural person, but it's a person, it recognized as a person in law. So if Toko,
right.
Safa, and all of them have been dissolved, then they are dead.
No, no,
And
the
so what?
companies, no, the
So how do you
company,
transfer their liabilities and so to this new company, which is a new person?
right. So the company
Yeah.
is dead, but the liabilities remain and the workers remain, particularly if they are absorbed into the new entity. It's called uh, um, a succession. So that, um, if you buy my house, you buy my house with, well, let me know as a bad example. But it's very clear and
So
settled in industrial
if
relation
you're selling house
that
and
this,
chattel,
no, 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 I
if you're
withdrew
selling
that.
house with chattel, so if
No,
you're
no, no,
selling
no.
house with chattel,
No.
I expect to get the fridge and the couch and the stove and all of that.
Well, you could say that, right?
Yeah.
But right, so you could say that. So the point is that in successorship, in terms of employment successorship, you have to take everything with it. And in the case of the assembly, when the PNM was in power, they absorbed all the workers. And in fact, they wrote a letter to the employees that your
Right.
service will be carried over. Every worker
Right.
got
And
offer of letter that that their service will be carried over without break, so
so
that they can't.
Tadco communicated that to the employees.
That's correct.
So that was in the contemplation of the both parties, the employees and employer.
Exactly.
Okay.
So right. So now you get the point. I just want to read this for the public. And it says here in the case of TD 216 of 2001, a worker, let me read it clearly for people to hear, because people are saying and teaching people the wrong thing to justify the position. Again, I don't have any quarrel with the executive council. That's my party. But the party must learn to disagree and disagree without recrimination. It strengthens the
What
party. It
paragraph are
strengthens
you
the
reading
democracy.
from? What
So this is
paragraph are you?
paragraph 10.
Yes, good. Yes.
Right. Further, in the case of Banking and General Workers Union and Antilles Cooperatives Limited, the court reiterated in TD 216 of 2001 that, quote, a worker who serves an employer pursuant to a fixed term contract is a worker within the meaning of the Industrial Relations Act, unless specifically excluded by law. Further, it is well settled that a failure to renew a fixed term contract upon its expiry can be a dismissal, which is harsh and oppressive and not in accordance with the principles of good industrial relations practice, unquote. So no employer who did not find an employee doing something that went to the root of his employment or has practiced anything against the principles of employment should not renew a worker's contract. The law says it is wrong. That judgment says it is well settled, and the employer is duty bound to do the right. And tonight I'm calling the chief secretary
No, but
to
no, before you
reinstate.
do,
Hold on, let me. All right, okay.
yeah. No, go ahead.
Tonight I'm calling the chief secretary. I believe he doesn't know, or he may have been wrongly advised. And because he went down to TADCO and promised the workers that none of them will be sent home. He has to hold his promise. As the chief executive on this island, you cannot promise the workers that none of you will be sent home. And then 6 weeks later, all the workers are sent home and are without employment. And you pick back, I have to use the word pick, because they don't know what they're doing down at TADCO. And you pick back who you choose ad hocly, because there's no approved organizational structure. It's ad hoc that is happening down there. So the chief secretary would have journeyed, and he solemnly promised the workers that none would be sent home. And he has to, if he's to continue. It's a gentleman that I admire. I have no quarrel with him, so I want him to know that. I have no quarrel with any member of the executive council. Some of them feel I do, but I don't. But they have a duty to preserve employment in Tobago and not send home workers. One of the workers are in fact working by me, have 5 children. 5. So one had an employee that I had before left, and I said, well, that's all I can offer. I can't offer you $10,000-$15,000. She said, Mr. James, I'm going to take it because I have 5 mouths to feed. The action is unconscionable. How you could send home people in just like that without an overriding public interest? What is the overriding public interest to send home the workers? Somebody should tell me. One woman is working for $29,000. She has loans to pay, car loan to pay, rent to pay, children go in school, and you put on the breadline for no good reason. When you have written to the workers before, 6 weeks before, asking them, do you want to continue your career? They said yes. And then 9 working days before the contracts come to an end, you send them home. It's unconscionable. And people are vexed because I speak out. I'm a Tobagonian. I have been fighting for the Tobago cause long before some of them were born. So they don't want nothing with me. Some of them don't know me. And they will spew lies on Facebook and make disparaging comments when in fact I'm protecting their future. So those of you who are criticizing me, Max James is protecting your future. And the party should be big enough to tell the executive you are wrong without recrimination. If you're going to govern with recrimination, then you're not fit to be in office. Say I'm sorry, take back the workers, because there's room, if that board understands what it can do, there's room for everybody. But they believe, and you know what, something that irked me, I think one of the board members, or somebody would have put on a chat that somebody had an Egyptian degree, so they're square pegs in round holes. I say, what craziness is this? Egypt existed long before trying to be an Egyptian degree.
Egyptian degree?
Right. So they're laughing that. Fools they are. Laughing that. When Trinidad and Tobago could hold in Egypt 10,000 times. Egypt was once a cradle of civilization. But they come to the public and disparage somebody who was a degree from Egypt, saying they have an Egyptian degree, so they are square pegs in round holes. What nonsense is that? How are we governing?
But have like the RRC, settled the outstanding issue of the description of whether or not the party is a worker, or is that still outstanding?
Right. So their counsel, who knows the law, who knows the process as anybody else, it's not like she has done something special. It's a trick, it's a chickenery or it's a trick that employers adopt all the time when they want to delay the inevitable. They pull out. One, is the worker in good standing, meaning have they paid their dues? Two, is the person indeed a worker? And you have to wait close to 2 years. There are things that we can do to speed it up. I want to say that on air. But the point of the matter, it is so egregious. Let me put a simpler word. It is so wicked
No,
and
but
unconscionable
but before you do, so
that you
this
could delay a
2 years,
process.
no, but this
Well,
2 years that you have to wait, is that the statutory period for waiting, or is it
no. What happens?
just
So what happens is this. What happens is this. So the RRCB will now invite comments to justify on the PSA side. Give us your reasons why you believe this person is a worker. That by the time that letter goes and comes, it takes 2 months or 3 months.
so
Then
what
the
prevents
employer,
the well, no, I understand. So it's not statutory. And because it's
right?
not statutory, what prevents the PSA from pursuing a judicial review action for undue delay?
Well, you're talking about through the public service. You're talking about staffing. Staffing is the issue. You have staffing is the issue in the serious areas of this country that promotes our democracy and so forth. You have vacancies in the Auditor General. You have vacancies in the GLSC. You have vacancy in Registrar General here. You have vacancies all over the place. So that, and then if you as an examiner started this matter, only you could continue. So even though you go on holiday, somebody can't continue it in your absence. So 2-3 months pass, then the employer will
Yeah,
write
but
back. They will hold
up
on.
until
They will delay. They will,
up until 2 years, would you agree that up until 2 years, the party whom you represent and is advocating for, that they are suffering an injustice, and the
and
judicial
that's why I'm
review
calling.
action, but the judicial review action is designed to protect that individual. The judicial review
But
action is not very concerned about what is causing the delay. It's whether or not there is a delay. So why
right.
did
But
again I
the
ask?
judicial you can't fix the question of a report from the RRCB. They can't
No,
tell the RRC to speed up.
an order of mandamus could compel it to appear at a particular time to avoid the delay of which you're complaining.
Right, but if the RRBC says I have no staff, and the employer on the other hand will say,
Well, if they say they
well,
have
we
no
object to
staff,
it.
then they have. No, if they say they have no staff, then they have just pled guilty to the undue delay that you have
No,
triggered against them.
but I want to tell you. No, but I want to tell you this part. I hear this part. It is not a unilateral thing. So the employer also has a voice in it. The employer can say, we feel that person is not a worker, and there'll be exchange of documents, and that takes 8 months, 9 months.
Oh, so it's a void of sort. It's a void
That's
of
correct.
sort to the. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And then by that time, a year passed, and the people who you put on the breadline are without a job. They are suffering. Tobago hardly has any employment anyway. And I'm saying
Now
to
I
the
want to get
executive.
that, but I want to get some questions out the way as well.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
You said that the decision to terminate does not accompany a minute from the Executive Council.
I'm
But
saying,
one would,
let me explain that. I'm saying to the Tobago public that the company has acted unilaterally, and the restructuring is just a guise to see their purported restructuring is just a guise, and the court will examine it. Now, if it is that TADCO is claiming that they have instructions to void, then that instruction must come from the Executive Council. The court will hit them for 6. I'm putting the case outside because their counsel knows it anyway. So there's no added value to her hearing it.
but you know,
So
this is an
if it
important
is,
question. The persons who have filed the complaint before the IC and so, and I'm not
that's the
sure
PSA.
why I omit. Yeah, the industrial court.
Yes.
So I'm not sure why I omitted to ask you this, but it now dawned on me again. Is it
Go
a
ahead.
case that the company said we were restructuring, we're not getting into the business right away of renewing contracts, but you can reapply? So have they reapplied and were refused? Or well, not
So,
successful after reapplication?
so that is a lot of nonsense. Let me
No,
talk like
no,
a
no,
regular.
no,
Not you,
no,
I'm just
Max.
saying.
No,
No,
yeah, answer the question.
I answered
So
you.
so
I
they
answered you.
reapply and were not successful
No, no, no,
or
no.
not?
I answered you. I'm
Yeah, tell
saying
me.
that. I'm saying.
Answer.
You had to hear me out now. I'm
No, I
saying.
listened. I
All
listened,
right.
but I want answer to the question.
But I answer you directly.
Yes.
I ain't going around the bush. That question or issue is nonsensical because they had a duty to renew the contracts of the workers without them reapplying. That's the issue. Now they're pushing that narrative in the public that, well, you have to reapply. The law says differently. The law says the contracts must be automatically renewed. I'd have to
Okay.
apply for it.
And have
So
any of the positions in the restructuring? I know I tell you I had some questions I have what allow you to run. In the
no, go ahead.
restructuring, have any of the positions been deemed or declared redundant and so in the restructuring process?
No, I don't know. And I'm saying I want to stay away from that term restructuring because there is no lawfully stated restructuring in TADCO. They're pushing that narrative. For that to happen, let me tell you two big ones. For a
You
restructuring to be
introduce it,
lawful.
you know, my friend.
No,
You
no, no,
introduce
no,
the
no.
issue of
No, I
restructuring
introduce
in
it
your
because
intro
that's
to me.
no, I'm introducing it because that's what
Yeah.
they are saying outside there to the public.
Okay.
But it's
Okay.
untrue.
And
For
you
it
are
to be law,
denying that there is any restructuring taking place, yes?
and if there is, it was done unlawfully. Because for it to happen, the company had in its review would go to its line secretary and say, listen, the company ain't making any money, so we might have to restructure these entire operations. That line secretary, whoever he or she is, will take a note to executive council and say, listen, we have problems here. So we have to restructure the whole thing. Exec council will now issue a minute authorizing the board to restructure, and on presentation of a new organization structure, then they can go ahead and to do what they have to do and dismiss the workers. While they're dismissing the workers, they have to tell the workers, because there are trade unions in the workplace too, they have to come to the PSC and come to OWTU and say, listen, our hands are tied, we have these problems, and we have to restructure. The union will say, listen, you have to follow the Retrenchment and Severance Payments Act. You have to follow these sets of rules before you can, in fact, send them the workers. Nothing like that happened. I would love to see the exec council minute. And my argument is that there is no overriding public interest. And again, I want to read just again for those who came in the settled case law, because they're talking the restructuring thing that didn't happen. It ain't gonna happen properly. The act has really died, has already been cast, so they can't come now and claim that. But where people are telling you all that your contract come to an end and that is it, it's foolishness. Again, I'm reading the law. The law says a worker who serves an employer pursuant to a fixed term contract is a worker under the meaning of the Industrial Relations Act. Further, it is well settled that a failure to renew a fixed term contract upon its expiry can be a dismissal, which is harsh and oppressive and not in accordance with the principles of good industrial relations practice. And that is only one of them. There are several of them that speak the same thing, from even the president of the court. So there's no way TADCO can get away. They only delay in the inevitable. And I'm saying that the chief secretary must instruct his line secretary and the company to take back the workers, renew their contracts for the same time limit that they had and enjoyed, and let us have peace in Tobago. Don't blame me, Max James, and say I'm endangering the party. The persons who you all gave the job to turn around the company has failed. And before you all fire him, well, saying Max James bad. I'm protecting the workers. That's all I'm doing. And the
My
executive
final.
council must follow the law.
No,
The
and I have two
executive
more
council must
questions.
follow the rule. Skippy, the executive council must follow the rule of law. That's what you put in
Well,
government to do.
the rule of law is supreme, eh? The rule of law should, should be the golden thread that keeps our society together with democratic principles and so. So I have two questions, and I'm going to ask these questions very frontally. Are those how much workers it was? Sorry, this is not one of the two. How much workers it is?
70 plus. And when you
70.
translate that, translate that to the dependents, you're talking about 300 people. And when you translate
Right.
that to friends and sympathizers, you're easily talking close to 800 to 1,000 people who you have offended in Tobago. And that endangers your re-election.
All right.
Because most of them didn't win by,
right.
some of them win by 1 vote or 20 votes. And that's political suicide.
2,000 persons. 2,000 persons are affected by this decision.
Obviously.
And I want to say to the 70 persons and their dependents and so directly, I empathize with you. I understand what it is to be unemployed. I understand what it is to have mouths to feed, and there's no doubt about it. I'm actually going to read, I'm going to ask the question all the same. So he said that two, and it had to be three. Is this a political cleansing? Is it that these were people hired by the PNM and before, and they have always been there, and they are a group of mischief makers, and they're disrespecting the new administration, and by administration I don't mean the exec council, disrespecting the new management structure down there? Is it that they are militating against the new rules and discipline? Is this the case?
Some of those
Is
workers...
it that they are turbulent employees inspired and generated by the mischievousness of their political beliefs, and as a result, management decide we can take this no longer, we will have to do what we have to do? Is that the case? I don't know, but I'm asking.
And I'm saying, bull rush. Some of those very workers who were employed since in our time, NER, when I was in as a secretary, since that time, it took me 25, 26, 27 years ago, coming down through the times, a few more would have, by virtue of attrition, some of them would have gone home. But that is irrelevant. These people are Tobagonians. And I can tell you, because
I didn't ask you to qualify it. I'm asking you if that is the case. Is it the case or not?
That is not the case. And I want to add something. I know for a fact.
Right. So then my other question is, as opposed to this grand okay, go ahead.
I know for a fact, because one or two of them confessed to me. Mr. James, I'm a PNM, and I voted for TPP or PDP. I took my mother, my father in a wheelchair, my cousins, and I went and I voted up in Signal Hill. People in Goodwood, people all over voted for PDP right down there. So they're not sending home PNM. And even if the people were PNM, you have a duty to uphold the constitution, the law, and to treat people with fairness and with equity. The issue is a human resource management issue and the governance. They don't know what is good human resource management practices. And I suspect the administration is failing in that regard. They have to fix it. The solution is to send home workers. The solution is to fix those who are not embarking upon proper human resource management practices.
Right.
So if you put a man in charge of a company,
it said, comrade, I have a 1-year-old when he make 9 o'clock and at home. She just start to walk out there with a bottle in she hand, and show me hug up sign. That means she ready for me to come with a sleep, and it's 9 o'clock. So I have to ask you. the scripture said, are there none among you In other words, the scripture is
You
saying,
you putting me in trouble now.
no, the scripture was saying, I wish I could find it. I can't find it now, but so be it. But I know the part of the scripture is say, in
I
Israel,
myself.
there's plenty problem, and he say, listen, are there none among you that can be judges in your matter that could bring some reconciliation and so you need? Is there no one among you all there in Tobago that could engage in conciliatory talks with a view to settling this as opposed to you?
Going to
Because
court.
the optics is what I'm looking at, right? And the optics
Yes.
is important. I
Correct.
understand what you're doing, and I support what you're doing. Bread and butter issues must have no compromise because it's 8 years. You see those workers you have described? I
Yes.
don't know what the facts are. But if I am to believe what you presented here tonight, and I have no reason to doubt so far speaking to you, I have suffered that for 8 years with this PNM government here. It's not a nice feeling to know that you're being ostracized and estranged and so, because those are not excuses you could give the banks and tea and tech and the
Exactly.
groceries, and yeah, those are not excuses you could give. It's not a nice feeling. It's a very
That's
uncomfortable
correct.
feeling. And so it's on that basis I'm asking, is there none among you there in Tobago that can operate as conciliator in this matter to arrive at an amicable solution?
So you think you could debate with Ricardo Alfred? He convinced an Eskimo to buy snow. That fella. He's the chairman of
With
the company.
no reconciliation, not debating,
No,
conciliatory
well,
talks,
no,
not debates.
what I mean, he will tell you Franco meant that he ain't doing it. Them fellas ain't willing to listen, you know. But I'm saying the larger or principal public officer in Tobago is ultimately the chief secretary. The chief secretary is on record of telling all of the workers, none of you will be sent home. I am holding his feet to the fire. I'm holding him to that promise. When you make a promise, you must fulfill it. Or you go back to the person or persons involved. Listen, I am taking responsibility for this. I can't do this. I can't do that. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that. But you can't make a promise and allow somebody else to cause you to break your promise. Then you will ultimately be held responsible. So I am asking the chief secretary quite respectfully. Again, the chief secretary knows. I've sat with him. I sincerely believe he's an honorable guy. I really do. I'm saying, chief secretary, I believe you're an honorable guy. But if you promise the workers, you cannot go back on that promise. It's a matter that will be arbitrated in court, and you, chief secretary, can be called to answer in front of the court. And your agriculture secretary and the board of directors, all of them, especially, I mean, you, Skippy, know that there's a penal code, right? If they disobey the order of the court, there's a penal code attached to it. I have read out for the executive council tonight. I have read out for workers in this country of Tobago tonight. Your contract must be renewed even though it has come to an end. That's what the case law said. Do not follow the people who want to get their way and say, Children Authority doing this other doing it, and that's TADCO policy. TADCO's policy or Children's Authority policy cannot trump the law. You are sworn to obey the constitutional law, especially settled case law. You must do the right thing. I'm calling upon the chief secretary and his entire executive council to do the honorable thing, that is to reinstate the workers because the law supports that. I done. According to the judge, I end.
Anything that have to do with people paying their bills and feeding their children and so is not a very comfortable thing to discuss. I must admit, I have interviewed hundreds of persons all over the world, India, Botswana, China, all about. And I'm not sure if it's because it's Tobago. It's one of the most disheartening interviews I've ever had. And I insist upon the point again. Well, let me ask you, this was the final question. Because clearly from the stand you taking, are you prepared to like sever ties with the TPP that you have supported and I imagine participated in its founding and so over this issue?
Not at all. What we have to do
Not
is to
at all.
punish those. Not at all. The people who you put in charge of the company that have failed you, you have to punish those and not punish the workers. You cannot
But
put a
there's
person in charge.
but there are so much pastors up there. I mean, one
No,
pastor that
no.
I really admired, God hear me, is a pastor I really, really admire. Pastor Thomas from the Seventh-day Adventist Church. There's Father Forrester, another priest that I have tremendous respect for. What's his name? Phil Isaac. Oh God, hear me. Father Isaac, sorry. There are just so
Right.
much people up there. You saying that there's nobody in Tobago where the both sides. There's Richard Alfred, the Justice of the Peace. There's just so much people. There's Miss Loretta Solomon. If need be, I will volunteer. You're saying that there exists nobody on the island up there that could sit in a room with the two representatives from the both parties to trash out this thing, even if it take a week for you to get back instructions, the TADCO guy to get back instructions from his board to bring resolve to this, because I am of the view that we must allow nothing at this time to disrupt that momentum of unifying the island as we gallop to that magnificent height of achieving our autonomy, which require everybody on board. And these
So, I,
simple
so,
dissents,
so I'm going. So
yeah,
I'm going to say this.
these
I'm going.
dissents and so has ways of snowballing, and that is why I'm asking, is there none among you up there that could bring the parties into a room and
So I'll
resolve
say
this
this.
matter?
I'll say this. It's going to sound rough to the TPP's ears, but I'm a member of the TPP. There's no organization structure yet in place, so you don't want to hear it on the chat. You want to hear it publicly. The fact of the matter, if you're talking autonomy and you're treating people like this already, then those governors have failed me, have failed us. You have to demonstrate magnanimity. You have to demonstrate that I can take a dissenting view without recrimination. And I know some of them would not like me for saying it, but you must be able to govern within and amongst dissenting views. And don't say, well, Max James went in public and he said this. You were told privately. And I have a duty to act on behalf of a worker and workers by an organization who have called me out of retirement to represent them. So you can't take recrimination action against me, as some of them maybe want to do. I'm saying we must not govern this little Tobago by recrimination. The chief secretary again went down there. He promised solemnly that the workers would not be sent home. The issue is not with the workers. The issue is the people who failed in their human resource management, and the people should not suffer. It is the people who are in charge of the company for 2 years. Send them home and put fresh governance
Max,
in
I have to go
place.
and drink my tea.
Why?
I have to go and drink my tea.
Go
I
and
have
drink
to
your
go and
tea.
drink my tea.
Go and drink your tea. Go and drink your tea. I go and drink some clove water. I go and
Cold
drink some
water?
clove water. Yeah,
No,
good.
no, I think
You
I've
make me
got-
sleep. Yeah, clove water good for high blood pressure
No,
and sugar and all kind of thing.
I went to the church's Thanksgiving last weekend. So I didn't really do the carnival. I spent the whole weekend in church and so. And
So you didn't go and watch them girls in tower.
no. I was in church.
You're in
Fasting
church,
and
okay.
praying. And so they
All
gave
right.
me a bag of soursop leaves.
To cool it down.
And I drink it and I really, really enjoy it. And you never believe, I look forward to having a cup every night before I go to bed.
Well, every
Since Monday
night
when
before I
came back.
sleep, I just take
Yeah?
a cup of clove water for my health. And
Cold water.
I urge everybody to do it. Let me go and drink. You go where you go and drink. So what's up? I go and drink clove.
Clove. So, comrade,
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. I hear you. I hear you. And I want peaceful and calm resolution to this. I don't know
It is
what I
it
could
is
do more
only
than give
it,
voice to it.
it is only the
But
executive council it is only the executive council can fix it. They have a
okay, well,
duty.
let me give a suggestion as we come to an end. Can't you and the leader of the TADCO team seek audience when the executive council meet next and have the executive council sit as judges? And I'm using the term sit as judges. And both of you ponder your arguments out there. And I mean, it's a step in a direction that could bring some resolution. Eh?
The only resolution is for the workers to be reinstated, Mr. Thomas. You know, as a trade unionist, I can't ask for nothing less than that. The workers must be reinstated, as
And
there will be no peace.
And what is the company's position?
The company's position is to reinstate the workers on instruction of the executive council or the line secretary.
No. Your position is that all the workers must be reinstated or else there will be no peace.
That's
and I'm
correct.
asking, so what is the company's position? That they're reinstating some, none? What is the company's position?
The company has already acted. They have sent home all the workers and then pick back who they choose, which is
But were they
advocacy.
sent home with the appropriate packages and so?
No, not at all. I don't want to call names, but someone has said, we are preparing a package for the disgruntled workers. I'm trying to be very diplomatic and I'm trying to be generous and to be statesmanlike. A member has said, we are preparing a package for the disgruntled workers. And that's a most wicked statement. I must be disgruntled if you send me home. So what nonsense is that? I must be unhappy. If you pinch me, Skippy, I'm going to cry. And if you cut me, I go bleed. So there's no disgruntled workers. They were wronged.
Yeah.
They were
John
wronged.
knows I want this to be resolved. I really wish there's a peaceful way to resolve this. And
Only peaceful way is to reinstate all the workers. And if later down the road,
No, but surely the company must be allowed leeway to proceed with its agendas and so without hindrances of persons they don't want in their employ. Surely. But having
the
said
law says you can't.
a number of 70. So surely there could be a compromise between both
No, I'm
yourselves
saying-
and the employers.
No, I'm saying the law says they cannot do that. Let's follow the law.
I look forward to looking on to seeing where this goes. But I also look forward expecting a peaceful and amicable solution. John knows I may even volunteer to mediate same. But folks, until then, have a very good night.
Skippy, let me just close again by reading the law for the people. The law says, it is well settled that a failure to renew a fixed term contract upon its expiry can be a dismissal, which is harsh and oppressive and not in accordance with the principles of good industrial relations practice. The executive council must follow the law.
But is that read? Okay, I hear you with that, and you'll forgive me for saying to you, I intend to read the entire judgment to get the context of it. Eh?
You're free to.
No, I would, yeah, because I don't want to comment on it unless I get the context of it. Yeah,
and there are several of them. Eh? Even the president of the court would have said earlier that. I read the president of the court say.
No, I have to go and drink my tea.
Well, go ahead. Another time we will talk.
Next week, let's continue it.
I have made the point.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if I'll be on again, right? So, folks, as I told you, I really don't know if this show would continue after tonight. I think I explained it very early in the beginning of the show and so. But for whatever it's worth, have a good night. Have a safe night. And let us pray for a resolution on this standoff there at Tadco. Good night.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the commentators, guest, and host. They do not explicitly or necessarily reflect nor represent the policy or the views held by Tobago Updates or this network. Tobago Updates or this network cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed during this program.